Good morning, everyone. This is Stephen Khuong along with Jess Furman and Natalie Kalea Robinson. It is the first month of the year, and we're going to dive right into some of the topics that we believe most of you all want to discuss and want to hear about. First thing that comes to mind, changes in the new year, how we're going to think about approaching growth, and this can include investments, career growth, and maybe even some predictions for this year. So I will start off by asking this question. Natalice, what do you think are some of the major changes that we're going to encounter this year as a human species?
Well, I think, with the advent of, all the trends that are happening right now with COVID, just and how that has changed the way that we work. And then, this trend of sort of people going into the metaverse or going into kind of different worlds. One of the things I've been thinking about is, or actually I read this morning, people aren't the rate of people enrolling in colleges, for example, has dropped severely. Now, people going to grad school, that has increased. I think that sort of makes sense because if you're stuck in this period, like, what are you going to do if you can't, you know, if you want to grow? But in terms of college, it's like if you're young and hungry and you see like crypto taking off or you see, something else, like, why not there? Why not go there? And I think that's going to change. And also with COVID, people are quitting at like record rates. It's really hard to find like employees. And so that's kind of where my head is going for 2022. We're going to have to adjust to where people utilize their time and invest their time.
I like that. That's a very, very keen observation. Jess, I'll throw it up to you.
I agree with Annalise. I think it's like, you know, a lot of people aren't going back to offices. If they are, it's kind of, a limited workforce. I think that, I think it's been long coming that there's so many, you look at the rise of the gig economy, right? Just in general over the last, how many years. And then you think about, just the advancements we've made with being able to work remote. And it's definitely reshaping, I think, the workforce. And then, conversely, reshaping the way that I think business owners have to think about retaining talent, and also motivating the talent and the workforce that they have. And I think that, it's interesting because I was listening to Gary Vee and he was talking about how all these companies are saying no one wants to work, no one wants to work. And sure, yeah, there is government aid that I think definitely doesn't add incentive for people to return back to the workforce in the short term. But the fact of the matter is there are also ways to cobble together a living that's comparable, if not, more profitable for you given the gig economy and given, access to different digital resources and different types of businesses. So I think, it's going to be really interesting to see, what that does to the workforce and what that does, even on the consumer side to prices, going into places in person, like, how does that affect the price points of certain services or products that we're used to getting?
Give us some examples of hustles that one can participate in to make income if they're not interested in going back to a traditional job.
Oh my gosh, there's so many hustles. I mean, like, a lot of these services that have cropped up, like the Fivers of the world or, TaskRabbit, like, TaskRabbit being more driven towards, real world. You show up, you help someone move, you help someone mow their lawn, you get their groceries. There's just all of this technology and
Talk to us about Fiverr. Some of our listeners may not be familiar with what Fiverr is.
yeah, Fiverr's kind of like it's kind of in the silo of virtual assistants, which also I think is important if you're a business owner. Like, kind of like the days are gone where you have to, like, maybe hire someone in person and pay them a certain rate. Like, you have access to an international workforce, and you have all of these services that have cropped up. So Fiverr is essentially the same as you hiring, say, a virtual assistant, only it's geared more towards creative output. So, for example, I'm working on a comic series as a spin-off for a TV series that we're pitching. And we went on Fiverr and we found an artist that we really liked and we negotiated a price. And this amazing, amazing artist mocked up the characters for us, and what we paid him, equivalent to what he makes in, say, Nigeria. Like, that's a pretty good, he's making, you look at what the minimum wage is there and you look at how far that money goes, like that's a fairly significant amount of income, for what we paid. And, conversely, here in the US, I think the price point would be much different. So, I think, like, conversely, sure, like, if you work here, are you losing jobs to people overseas? Potentially, but you also can tap in the reverse. You can list yourself on these services. You can get clients all over the world without having to hop on an airplane.
Okay, just to add to that, I've definitely hired people on Fiverr who as research assistants,
Mm.
and the incredible amount of like academic knowledge that you can tap in a foreign country is incredible. I mean, it's insane. As a research assistant, I've been able to hire doctors in foreign countries to do research, and that has been immensely valuable. And so there's so much there.
I love this. Speaking of foreign countries, beyond being a freelancer on Fiverr, there is this trend of people, for example, in the Philippines, where they're going into various metaverses and they are playing these games and earning tokens, which does have real world value if they convert those tokens into fiat money. So, for example, Axie Infinity is one of these games where there are use cases of players changing their livelihoods just by playing these games versus working in the physical world in their native countries. Jess, share your thoughts on this whole concept of making a living spending most of your time in the metaverse.
I mean, I think, like, first of all, like, let's take it back a step. And Annalise, I know you're, in your home life, you're very entrenched in this whole in this whole world as well, by proxy.
For
But
better or worse.
yeah, for better or worse, literally, yes. But let's take it back for a second, and let's just kind of discuss the word meta and metaverse. There was a Zuckerberg announcement, which, Steve, you and I were discussing before we got on this podcast today. The concept of a metaverse isn't clearly defined, and largely what it is just literally how you interact with the digital experience, right? You're on your phone, you're playing a mobile game, whether you're, in VR headset. Like, there are varying degrees of how you can interact with a metaverse. And I think when a lot of people hear it, especially with the new, announcement by Zuckerberg in terms of it being Facebook being changed to Meta, it's easy to think that it's this, like, Ready Player One sci-fi experience, which of course it will be, and it is largely, but it does include the mobile game thing. And, the Axie Infinity thing, I think, is wonderful. What excites me about this is that I feel like it's a bit of a great equalizer, right? You have people who have access to these mobile phones in, Southeast Asia, in these markets where, like, yeah, you're right, like, they're earning more than they would earn, doing manual labor, or working in fields, or working in factories. And it's incredible that they have that opportunity if they can get access to technology and plug into the system. I think it's fantastic.
What are your thoughts, Annalise? When we think about the next generation, some of these younger folks are actually spending more time in this different reality. I mean, I hate to call it artificial reality because I'm sure for some of those folks, being in Axie Infinity is more real than being in perhaps a country where the economics are really poor and opportunities for financial growth are non-existent. What is your thought on that, Natalie?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an incredible opportunity, right? Like, as Jess said, it's a great equalizer. And that is really, really exciting because I think for so long, when I was at GSB, there was a program, like an impact program, and a lot of entrepreneurs would go out to less developed, underdeveloped countries and try to create, systems or new mechanisms or new products by which people could come up, and this is sort of the closest to sort of an overnight, avenue to sort of come up. And so that's really exciting. The On the flip side, and this is not just for people in other countries, but just people as a whole, some of the softer questions I ask myself is, well, then, what do people invest their time in then? Does this create better relationships that people have? Like, does it improve their relationships or does it diminish them? Do people feel more connected to the world or less? And I know that these are super soft questions, but this is sort of what is in my head. Um, you know, in terms of trends, obviously I work in skincare and beauty. And so I think, does participating in the metaverse mean that you care less about your health or more? And I don't know. I don't have any like hypotheses around that quite yet, but it's definitely on my mind.
Well, these are strong philosophical questions, and I think they're worthy of another question. How do we define what it is to be human? Is it defined by our relationships with other people? And then we have to define relationships. Prior to the advent of massive communications networks such as the telephone or the internet, humans have mostly been connected to people within their physical proximity. And the world is different now. Let's take a step back, and I'll throw this one over the fence to Jess. How would you define a relationship, in particular, human relationship? I'll make it one level more challenging. How do you define a meaningful human relationship? And after you answer that question, maybe we can go back to look at the various vehicles in which we can develop these relationships.
Yeah, I mean, I think, for me, like, I mean, relationships, no, I guess defining a relationship that's not meaningful doesn't, I'm not entirely sure if there is a definition of a relationship that's not meaningful. Like, I think that inherent in the word relationship is meaning, right? Because you're relating to another. I think it's tricky because I think it comes down to like so many different levels of, like of personality, of socialization, of religious groups, of like, just in general, like how what your tribe is like, and on a larger level, like what your political views are. So I think like, stepping into this world, like, the meaning of a relationship is going to be different, or the meaningfulness of how that relationship expresses itself. Maybe it's one or two close friends, maybe it's your entire community of people, maybe it is based around a religion or a church, like maybe it's based around your financial goals or sport, like I think it's fascinating because you know I think what excites me about this is I don't doubt human connectivity. I don't doubt that we're tribal, and I don't doubt that we've evolved to the complex society that we have above all other creatures on this planet because of our ability to collectively evolve and our ability to communicate and have relationships. But I think in this new sphere, like it's easy at face value to say, okay, if everyone's staring at their phones, there's a they're being disconnected. You see people sitting around a a dinner table and they're all on their own little devices. Maybe we're redefining connectivity, and is there a way to kind of, as this whole concept evolves, like move into this new space, this new like concept of a metaverse and our digital identities to strengthen the connections between people. So I'm not sure if that answers the question, but I see it as a way of allowing people to define what connectivity means to them. I don't think that it necessarily takes away from it. I think it just helps you redefine it.
I love that answer. You answered the question by asking another question. What is connectivity and what is meaningful connectivity? I love that Natalie's raised this a bit earlier. She runs a forward thinking company in that, where she's providing customization to a product that can help enhance not only the physical composition of a person's face, but also in some cases can provide a lot of structure to building someone's confidence as well. But that is built on the foundation that the relationship between the person that's buying the product and someone else is a physical relationship that involves close proximity. If this next generation of younger people are spending the majority of their time, if not all of their time, in this different reality, and I hate to call it virtual, it's just a different reality. How does that impact your business, Natalice?
Yeah, I mean, I think about that in the far future, and I think about and health in general, right? I think I don't have a clear answer to that, but some of the things that I do think about are, so for, this is sort of a tidbit, but your skin microbiome, for example, changes if you are in a relationship, in a new relationship with someone, and you are with that person for many hours of the day. Your skin microbiome will change. Both of yours will change because
That's
there's like skin
fascinating.
to skin contact, right? It also changes if you have a dog or a cat, or if you don't have pets. Um, Actually, the more diverse your skin microbiome is, in general, it's correlated with more optimal. I mean, it's an optimal situation. You have more diversity, so you want that. So, in this, hypothetical situation where someone is alone, in a and they don't have pets, they aren't really seeing a lot of people, and they kind of live in this other world most of the time, then does that decrease sort of skin health? And you could argue there are other microbiomes in your body, your gut, there's, I mean, the whole gamut of microbiomes. But does that suffer? Does your physical health suffer? But maybe your mental health is increased because you gain value out of being in this other world. But I mean, I guess the same could be true, of like people who play video games all the time. Um, it would be interesting. I don't think anyone has ever asked, like, as a whole, are the microbiomes of, or the health really, is really what we're talking about, of people who are isolated, better or worse than people who are around others physically.
You know what's interesting about that, Natalie, is like it's the same. It's exactly the same research findings for your personality and your mindset. Like it's so interesting to hear that like on a biological level, like there's that type of assimilation based on like say the person you're living with, or if you have pets or you don't have pets, for like the microbiome, because it's similar for like you are the five people you spend time with, right? People that you talk to the
Yep,
most. So this
totally.
proximity effect, working on a biological level, a psychological level, like, and, I mean, I think an understanding of the world level, your social, like all of it, like affects your goals, your dreams, what you want to be working on. So, I mean, yeah, it's interesting to think about. I think I'm pretty careful about what I put on around me. Like I switched to all natural products, and in terms of just like from the physical aspect, and then also just mindset. I'm also which is why I love that we do this podcast. Like I try to lean into the people who inspire me and make me think bigger and who think differently than I do, so I can continuously kind of check in with myself and not fall into like shortcutting patterns that don't serve me. But I wonder like I don't know. Like Steve, what about you and your friend circle and where you are in business? Like, this concept of like having expanders around you, and in general, like, is this something that like you find your peer group discussing, like, or even just for you, like, how do you feel about this proximity effect? Both from the level that Natalie's mentioned and what I'm bringing up in terms of social circles.
I haven't had this discussion with anyone in my circle, except for with you guys. I've we spent a good amount of time on New Year's Eve talking about the metaverse and the future of human behavior. I appreciate it. I will go as far as to ask this next question: will there ever be a time where the meta version of yourself, we take on an identity when we go into the metaverse? Will there ever be a time in that the meta version of ourselves will want to buy a skin microbiome product to use in the metaverse? So this is a leading question, which is to say that how much of the current human existence do we want to bring into the metaverse? In other words, when we're in the metaverse in the future, is it just this place where none of the current laws of physics apply? Or do we all get to fly by default in this metaverse? How much, I mean, do we need to eat food in there? These are all the questions that I wonder about. What do you think about that, Natalice?
I love that question. Um, it's I laugh because if it mimicked the world that we live in, taking into consideration like biological needs, then what's the point? Um, because I think this is like a world where like cancer doesn't exist, right? Like, we're all healthy and we all look amazing, right?
Well, I wonder, are they going to bring cancer and disease and, problems into the metaverse? This is sort of an existential question. Currently, why does everyone in the metaverse walk on land? They don't have to. In Roblox, you're walking, right? In Decentraland, you're walking. In the sandbox, you're walking. Why aren't people flying? So I wonder, like, how much are we going to bring our existing conditions into the metaverse, and why would we want to in the first place?
I mean, I would argue that it is an issue of gatewaying, right, into I think a new mindset. You people, relate to the things they identify with the most. So I think, you're already going into a different mode of communicating, and you're exploring in a place that's like largely cerebral and visual. And as we kind of build out augmented experiences, or you know probably at some point some sort of electrode nodes that, like, we don't need to have the augmented reality where someone's spraying water on us. Like, they can trigger a point in our brain that our sensory information, like with Matrix, we're talking about the Matrix. Like, I know it sounds ridiculous, but there are, our perception of feeling something is wet is an interpretation of our brain, right? So if we can figure out how to stimulate that same part of our brain, you wouldn't need to spray water on someone for them to feel wet. You wouldn't need to have the experience of wind hitting your face to be flying. You could theoretically program it. So I think that, it's just a simple element of, you know of making it approachable in this sense. I think it's a lot easier to have someone walk around a world because they know what feet are, and they know what walking is, and they know how to move past certain things. I think we haven't really gotten, really delved into a deeper sense of what that could be. But that would be my answer. Natalie's, I mean, again, for better or worse, you're in this world on multiple levels based on what I brought up in terms of even just augmented reality. Like, what would be your
Yeah.
response to this?
I think we're gonna bring everything that we feel is neutral or positive into the world. I don't know if we would bring anything negative because I don't see the point of it. If like, why would I want to spend more time there if I have more problems there than in my real life?
Yeah, no, I appreciate your answer, but I'm of a contrarian perspective. I think for good or worse, human beings want to be human beings. I know that sounds
Mm.
crazy, but I think there will be a time in the future where people are going to be like, I, I want to have the ability to pee and to
I'm
take a
bored.
yeah, like
Oh.
yeah, like I want to yeah, I want to go use a toilet in the metaverse, like toilet break, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jess. I don't play Roblox or Minecraft, but can you kill somebody in those environments? Can somebody die?
I mean, I know in like other gaming cultures, like, I think Roblox is like the kids version, kind of like SimCity,
Right,
ish. I
right.
mean, it's not even. It's not even can you die. I think it's like this is the cool part, right? Is everybody can create their own planet with its own rules. Like, it's basically like it's like it's. I feel like this is the era where, like, the people who grew up playing Dungeons and Dragons are like, finally, like, there's you can, which has evolved into these like complex, international environments where you have these, this gaming culture where you have continuity between your character and over the years in terms of what you build up within these worlds that are created. I think, I don't know. I think the crazy part, like you mentioned, like killing people, like I think the crazy part of this, which is cool, not crazy but exciting, would be, with a metaverse and with blockchain technology, smart contracts, you all of a sudden have open source gaming. So instead of just having to log into Roblox or just having to log into Sandbox, there are all these different places to be in that environment. Sorry, Sandbox is a meta, but, like, like, I would say like Second Life or Roblox, which is basically a self-contained privatized world. Privatized meaning, like, whatever you purchase in that world stays in that world. It's not the case for all of these metas that are popping up that have to do with the blockchain. You can move things around. So I think then the question becomes, like, you get to choose your reality, right? You can kind of, at best, you'll be able to, like, develop a character potentially and move into those other worlds. I don't know if maybe you can get murdered in one meta versus another, and what that looks like and how that translates back to maybe a meta where you can't get murdered, or sorry, like a specific gaming metaverse where the rules are a bit different. What I am interested in is the neural link between both. Like you see right now, like the technology they made, the advancements in technology with the ape playing Pong, where like he's sitting there and like he's moving the joystick, but it's really electrodes in his brain moving the Pong ball. That stuff terrifies and excites me on like so many levels because it's not a unilateral impulse, right? So I think the question would be then, yeah, like what if you are able to reverse the stimuli, like that type of electric current, and programming in a way where you die in this game, now you die in real life. Like I don't think that's, it sounds sci-fi, but I don't know, Natalice, what do you think? With all this tech, it doesn't feel improbable at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you said is true, that everyone can, communities can create their own community. And so, and you can set your own rules. And so if what you want is sort of excitement and challenge and thrill, then yeah, I don't think it seems that far-fetched. And it's funny, Steve, when you're like, well, maybe I just want to go, pee or whatever. And I think that's like novelty. It's funny, I think, yeah, I see it happening in a certain world, and I guess you can kind of choose your own adventure, right?
My prediction is that everything is going to go full circle. It's going to happen in cycles to where it's going to be so easy to just create your own world and create your own reality that somehow becomes boring. And then people are going to want to be vulnerable again. They're going to want to like have to go to the bathroom, and they're not going to want every single relationship in this new universe, this metaverse, to be the same. They're going to like, some people are not going to want to look perfect. They're going to want to develop unique relationships, and it's all going to come full circle. And then all of these people at some point are going to want to unplug from the matrix and then go outside and then realize, oh my God, there's an actual tree here that I can touch. There's a dog here that I can pet, and he's not perfect, and he smells different. And by the way, the fur triggers extreme allergies in me. I think that's what's going to happen. I mean, I don't know how long it's going to take, but I definitely see things being very cyclical. And are you guys familiar with the infinity symbol? It's kind of like a figure eight.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I think about in terms of advancing technology. Like, we're moving so fast into a place where we become almighty powerful. Like you said, Jess, like, what's to stop me from creating the perfect universe where I'm God? And I think as human beings, we are hungry for that power because we have egos. But then once we get that power, then what's next? I think the next level is coming back to the beginning of the source, which is, I want to be vulnerable. I want to have a life that's not infinite. I want to not be perfect. I don't want every single relationship to be perfect. So that's my prediction for the future. Silence.
Well, you dropped a lot to think about.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
You guys are great.
I just, Eternals, the movie was on the other day, or
That's
on
what I
my
was
TV
thinking
anyway.
about, Annalise. I was like, there's a movie. There's a couple of movies
Yeah,
about
there's
this.
a couple of movies. Yeah. And like, I don't want to ruin for anyone, but like, there's a character who wants to not be eternal. I mean, this brings up so many just sort of philosophical questions about like having a diverse set of feelings and experiences, whether good or bad, because having the bad experiences allows you to feel joy or more joy in the good experiences. And how does that play out in the metaverse, I guess, is what you're asking, Steve.
Yeah, and that's it. And speaking of something not being eternal, guess what? We are out of time, guys. This has been a fascinating conversation. I promise you this will not be the last in terms of receiving different philosophical perspectives from two of my most brilliant friends. But we are out of time. And signing out for Stephen Khuong, Jess Furman, and Natalice Robinson, this is The Unlikely Journey, and we'll see you guys next time. Happy New Year. Peace.